I don't quite know how to feel when so many people compliment me. Use words like legend or inspiration. These were just gifts that I was given.
The legendary Roy Orbison's journey through the rock and roll history books is truly remarkable. His rise from obscurity was a triumph of his heartfelt songs, which turned his suffering into genius. Behind the scenes, though, Orbison dealt with serious issues that led to his terrible and scandalous demise. Although his music touched countless hearts, his private battles overshadowed his achievements. As Roy Orbison's son confirms what we all believed, we invite you to join us as we explore his terrible life. It is important to have a solid background on Roy Orbison's early life before delving into the current discoveries made by his son. Orby Lee Orbison and Nadine Vesta Schultz had 3 boys. The second, Orbison, was born on April 23, 1936, in Vernon, Texas. Nadine loved art and poetry, but Orby struggled to find work as an oil field driller in the aftermath of the Great Depression. The paternal line of Orbison may be traced back to Thomas Orbison, who arrived in Pennsylvania from Lurgan, Northern Ireland, in 1715. In 1942, the family uprooted and headed to Fort Worth in search of employment prospects in the aviation industry. At the age of 4, Orbison started wearing heavy spectacles because of her vision problems. On his 6th birthday, Orbison's dad gave him a guitar, and he learned to play it with the help of his dad and elder brother. At the tender age of 7, he said, "I was finished, for anything else." His life's work had been profoundly impacted by country music, especially the passionate voice of Lefty Frizzell. Orbison took up the stage name Lefty Wilbury when performing with the Traveling Wilburys, drawing inspiration from Frizzell. Artists like as Moon Mullican, Hank Williams, and Jimmy Rogers were also greatly appreciated by him. In Fort Worth, he had his first taste of live music when he saw Ernest Tubb play from the back of a truck. The singing sessions in Fort Worth were very meaningful to Orbison because he was moved by the troops' powerful emotions as they prepared for deployment. Rhythm and blues, Tex-Mex, Cajun, and Mantovani's symphonic arrangements were just a few of the many musical styles he absorbed in West Texas. An old classic of Cajun music, Joel Blanc, was sung by him in public. He started singing on a local radio show when he was 8 years old and went on to host the show in the late 1940s, marking the beginning of his musical career. His weekly radio program began after he won a contest on KVWC when he was 9 years old. After a polio scare in 1944, his brother and he were sent to live with their grandmother in Vernon by their parents. As when two drew to a close, they made their way back to Vernon. The Orbison family uprooted their lives again in 1946, this time to Wink, Texas, in search of better job prospects. Roy was relieved to leave Wink since his life there was so focused on football, oil fields, and emptiness. Even as a young boy, he was self-conscious about his looks. He started dyeing his white hair black. He was well known for being kind and accommodating, despite his quiet personality. During recess, Roy played guitar by himself while the other kids played games. As a teenager, he struggled with shyness and poor self-esteem due to his lack of physical ability. Despite this, he never lost his love for singing, even though he never considered his voice to be anything special. There were many competing priorities when Roy Orbison first started out on his musical career. He took in a diverse array of musical styles, from the untamed rhythms of Ernest Tubb heard on Fort Worth streets to the heartfelt melodies of Cajun music. He made his radio debut on a local show when he was just 8 years old and went on to become the show's presenter. His weekly radio spot was Hiss after he won a contest by 9 o'clock. Roy overcame his low self-esteem and vision problems to become an even more passionate musician. He assembled the Wink Westerners when he was 13 years old, and they played many small places before landing their first paying engagement. He had planned to major in geology in college, but after seeing his classmate Pat Boone achieve great success in the music industry, he decided to follow his musical passions instead. Although Roy Orbison and the Teen Kings overcame many obstacles on their way to fame, they were able to do it because they were strong-willed and believed in themselves. They persisted despite hardship by staying true to their love of music and never giving up. Their experiences with Sam Phillips and Johnny Cash exposed them to the depressing truths of the music business, where setbacks and rejection were prevalent. But what really motivated Roy was his unshakable faith in himself and his resolve to follow his heart. There was a lot of pressure on the band to keep up their success when their TV programs and albums became popular. Still, they were able to persevere through adversity because of their relationship and the experiences they had shared. They were able to persevere through the intense competition because they had faith in each other and believed in their abilities. Roy and the Teen Kings persevered through the storms of fame with unwavering will and passion. How then did Roy become into the beloved celebrity that we once adored? How about Roy Orbison's son? What does he think of his dad? Stay tuned for further updates. Going to Sun Studio in Memphis was a watershed moment for the Teen Kings. After re-recording Ooby Dooby for Sun Records, they had success, selling over 200,000 copies and even entering into the Billboard Hot 100. As a result of their sudden stardom, they were able to tour with legendary musicians such as Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, Johnny Horton, and Sonny James. Roy Orbison aspired to win over audiences with his dynamic stage appearance, drawing inspiration from Elvis Presley. While the Teen Kings were becoming famous, he started experimenting with rockabilly composition, with songs like Go, Go, Go and Rock House. However, disagreements about who should get credit for composing what and how much royalties led to the band's breakup. Roy stayed in Memphis and asked his girlfriend Claudette Frady to come with him. Roy concentrated on improving his recording abilities as Phillips slept in another room. In spite of the lackluster reception his ballads received at first, he continued to hone his skills. Royalties, especially from the song Claudette, helped fund large purchases like his Cadillac. Roy went on a cross-country tour after feeling restrained by Sun Records and had a brief partnership with the country-focused songwriting company Acuff Rose Music. He collaborated with industry greats like Chet Atkins and worked relentlessly to produce a plethora of demonstration cassettes. The obstacles didn't dampen Roy's indefatigable love for music, which drove him further in his musical career. Roy, in Bryant's memory, was a meek, reserved man who seemed completely awestruck by the music industry. As if he were afraid of upsetting anyone, his singing was soft and lovely. Roy and his family lived in a tiny apartment, but he still found peace playing guitar in his car, even if he played gigs at night. Roy and songwriter Joe Melson began working together productively in 1958. They recorded 7 songs for RCA Victor over the course of numerous sessions, but the label ultimately released just 2 of them as singles. Roy, who was looking for a new beginning, attracted the ear of Monument Records producer Fred Foster. Roy found his musical calling at Monument Records, where he was able to flourish. Roy became a pioneer in the music industry after following Foster's advice and fully embracing his creative vision. After Roy began incorporating elements of the Nashville sound and working with world-class session musicians, his music began to sound more polished and professional. Both Paperboy and With the Bug, which Roy recorded during his first session at Monument, failed to get any attention from the music industry. Nevertheless, Roy recorded 3 new songs, including the highlight track Uptown, co-written with Joe Melson, with the addition of a string section. It all started with Monument Records, which launched Roy's meteoric rise to fame and allowed him to fully express himself creatively. Roy Orbison and Joe Melson wrote songs at this time that highlighted Roy's incredible vocal range and strength. Roy thrilled in the potential of his voice to soar and reverberate in an interview he gave to Rolling Stone in 1988. He was correct in his belief that his voice had progressed from its early Ooby Dooby days into something quite exceptional. His improvement between the releases of Ooby Dooby and signing with Monument Records would be readily apparent to anybody who followed his career trajectory. Roy sprang to fame as his single Only the Lonely became an instant hit, landing him a coveted place on New York City's Saturday night Beach Nut show with Dick Clark. Elvis Presley was so captivated by the song that he purchased many copies to give to his pals. After that, Roy and Melson released Blue Angel, a more complex song that went on to become a hit and further establish Roy as a major player in the music industry. After Roy became famous, he and his family, wife Claudette and son Roy Duane, moved permanently to Nashville. Roy started working on a new studio album with the intention of moving away from the pop sound of his previous singles. After hearing Maurice Ravel's Bolero, the protagonist of Running Scared decided he needed to keep an eye out for his romantic rival. But the song's demanding vocal range was too much for Roy, and he faltered as he tried to sing the highest note. Roy used a novel approach to overcome the challenge with the help of producer Fred Foster. How was this accomplished? To bring out Roy's voice, Foster retreated to one corner of the studio and surrounded him with coat racks. Roy stunned everyone on stage when he suddenly burst into a falsetto and shouted out the song's last high note. The completion of Running Scared was yet another achievement for Roy Orbison, demonstrating his remarkable singing abilities and relentless perseverance. Afterwards, Fred Foster discussed the recording session, praising Roy Orbison's outstanding vocal performance. In the weeks after its recording, Running Scared not only reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 list, but also made a splash in the UK, peaking at #9. Success like this paved the way for Roy's succeeding singles, which were all very much the same. Powerful stories about sensitive characters, with the trademark vocal crescendo serving as the climax. Crying was a smash hit in July 1961, penetrating the charts at #2. Featuring the bouncy R&B tune Candyman, the song spent 2 months in the top 30 on Billboard. A DJ on his 1962 Australian tour lovingly called him the Big O, a reference to his love of dramatic ballad endings. Throughout his career, Roy continued to go by this moniker. Simultaneously with the birth of his second son, Roy had chart success with his single Dream Baby, How Long Must I Dream, which peaked at #2 in the UK and #4 in the US. From 1962 to 1967, Roy was backed by the Webbs, who would eventually be called the Candymen. In spite of his achievements in the music industry, Roy struggled with personal issues, such as his deteriorating relationship with longtime collaborator Joe Melson, who was worried about Roy's rising solo career. However, Roy persisted in producing successful songs like The Crowd, Leah, and Working for the Man, often referencing his own experiences, including his stint working in the oil fields close to Wink, as inspiration. At the height of Roy Orbison's stardom, tragedy befell him, tragically pausing his musical career. Roy possessed an exceptional knack for music and a deep affection for vehicles and other forms of mechanical power. Not just that, but his wife Claudette as well. His first girlfriend Claudette and him became even closer since they shared a love of motorbikes. Riding side by side, they would bask in the liberty of the wide road. But on June 6, 1966, catastrophe struck out of the blue, shattering their delight. In the blink of an eye, Claudette's life was taken by a vehicle that sprang from nowhere. Roy was so devastated by the death that he buried himself in his art, finding solace in music as a means to cope with the outpouring of compassion and sorrow from others. During that time, he was set to act in the film The Fastest Guitar Alive, for which he worked with Bill Dees to compose the score. It was rethought as a comedy after being originally planned as a dramatic western. Using a guitar as a weapon, Roy depicted a spy in the Civil War who was responsible for protecting and transporting gold to the Confederate Army. Unfortunately for him, the picture bombed at the box office and with reviewers, ending his career on a low note. After that, Roy released CDs covering Hank Williams and Don Gibson's music, but nobody seemed interested. As Jimi Hendrix and the Rolling Stones rose to prominence as counterculture heroes, Roy found it difficult to establish himself in the ever-changing music industry. He persevered through thick and thin, drawing inspiration from the unwavering spirit of a tree that has stood the test of time and knows that his moment will come again. news reached Roy of a terrible fire that had consumed his house in Hendersonville, Tennessee, taking the lives of his two oldest sons, as if destiny hadn't already delivered him enough blows. Because this was too much for one individual to bear, he descended into an unfathomable pit of despair. Many speculate that a lacquer-containing spray can was the ignition source for the devastating fire that destroyed Roy Orbison's house. Because of the traumatic memories it evoked, he sold the land to Johnny Cash, who decided to tear down the structure and plant an orchard in its stead. After Roy had grieved for a while, he found comfort in his marriage to Barbara Jacobs, a German native, on March 25, 1969. Amidst the darkness of loss, he and his wife welcomed two boys, Roy Kelton in 1970 and Alexander in 1975, writing fresh chapters in his life. Despite Roy's personal happiness, his music career took a nosedive in the 1970s. He became discouraged and doubted his talents when record after album fell flat. After 10 years without a top-charting album and few hit singles, Roy's global profile began to decline. After signing a brief contract with Mercury Records, he left MGM Records in 1973. It was impossible to ignore Roy's impact, no matter how hard he tried. Cover versions of his songs by singers like Bruce Springsteen, Emmylou Harris, Graham Parsons, and Glenn Campbell gave them fresh life. Orbison's influence was far-reaching. His songs were beloved by country and rock music fans alike. A comeback in Roy's popularity occurred in January 1976, when an album of his greatest songs unexpectedly reached #1 on the UK charts. The Eagles, who had been Linda Ronstadt's backup band, even invited him to open for them at one point. With a peak of #3 on the Billboard charts and a 24-week reign at the top, Ronstadt's rendition of Blue Bayou further cemented Roy's legend. Roy Orbison's impact on music was unwavering and left an everlasting impression on the business, no matter what happened. In spite of everything that he had through, Roy Orbison never gave up hope. With Fred Foster, he recorded Regeneration in 1976 on Monument Records, but the album did little to revitalize his career. When Roy's health started to decline in late 1977, he sought solace in Hawaii, marking a turning point in his story. After a battery of diagnostic procedures indicated severely blocked coronary arteries, the patient had triple coronary bypass surgery on January 18, 1978. Although Roy's weight would vary in the years after surgery, he felt revitalized upon leaving the operating room, despite the fact that his health problems persisted due to duodenal ulcers and excessive smoking. Don McLean's 1980 cover of Crying revived interest in Roy's music and sent the song back to the top of the charts. A memorable performance of Pretty Woman in an episode of The Dukes of Hazzard in 1981 followed. Roy, who had fallen out of favor in the United States, saw an unforeseen surge in popularity in countries like Bulgaria, where he was greeted by adoring admirers who flocked to him during his tour. Duets with Emmylou Harris on 1981's That Lovin' You Feelin' Again and a cameo appearance in the film Roadie both marked a turning point in Roy's career. Along with Van Halen's hard rock rendition of Oh Pretty Woman on their 1982 album Diver Down, this acknowledgement brought Roy's enduring music to a new audience and paved the way for his return. The abrupt death of Roy Orbison on December 6, 1988, signified the conclusion of a musical period. He was 52 years old when he died of a heart attack after returning home from an Ohio performance at the Front Row Theater. Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery was the site of his funeral after his untimely passing rocked the music industry. Tributes were held in both Nashville and Los Angeles in his honor. Posthumously released on January 31, 1989, Orbison's last album, Mystery Girl, ensured that his reputation would continue even after his tragic death. Single You Got It from the album demonstrated his enduring brilliance and garnered him a Grammy Award nomination. The album that Orbison and the Traveling Wilburys released together was likewise a smashing success, going on to spend 53 weeks in the U.S. charts and garnering a Grammy for Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group. being the first dead musician to have two albums in the U.S. top 5 at the same time, since Elvis Presley ensured that Orbison's impact would reverberate long after his passing. While his solo album Mystery Girl was just behind at number 5, Traveling Wilburys Vol. 1-inch was at number 4. He continued to enjoy posthumous success in the UK, where two of his solo albums peaked at number 3, earning him even more praise. His legendary stature as a musician whose skill transcends decades was cemented by Orbison's ongoing effect on the music business. Additionally, Wilburys on the Road Vol. 1's 53-week run on the U.S. charts, during which it peaked at #3, was outstanding. In Australia, it was number 1, and in the UK it peaked at number 16. Not only was the album included in Rolling Stone's top 100 albums of the decade, but it also won a Grammy for Best Rock Performance by a duo or group. The video for End of the Line was released after Orbison passed away, although the Traveling Wilburys Handle with Care video included him. Another album incorporating Orbison's songs, King of Hearts, was published on October 20, 1992. With the publication of The Very Best of Roy Orbison in 1996, a biography of the musician was unveiled. Barbara Orbison was in charge of Roy Orbison Enterprises, the company he founded, and his estate. Alex and Roy Kelton Jr., Orbison's sons, took over the company's administration following Barbara's death in December 2011. The Mystery Girl Deluxe Edition that was released in 2014 to celebrate the album's 25th anniversary has a demo version of Orbison's song The Way Is Love on it. Featuring Orbison's vocals and instrumental contributions from his sons, the music was originally recorded on a stereo cassette player circa 1986. Roy Jr., Wesley, and Alex Orbison's recently published biography, The Authorized Roy Orbison, gives readers a full image of their famous father, husband, and musician father figure by removing the mask of the singer's magnetic personality. From their upbringing in Texas to his recording popularity and untimely death at the age of 52, Orbison's career is chronicled by the three siblings, who lovingly call themselves Roy's Boys, and music writer Jeff Slate. There are almost 300 photos in the book, many of which have never been published before, and they all help to set the scene for the Orbison story. Not only is the book being released alongside the CD, but Roy Orbison, with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. A Love So Beautiful is also available. The album features Orbison's original vocal tracks to some of his most famous songs, accompanied by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra of London, and on occasion, his three sons, who are all accomplished musicians. Roy Orbison Jr. discussed the biography with Rolling Stone Country, revealing that his father had started a comparable endeavor during his career resurgence in the 1980s and was halfway through penning a memoir about his life when he passed away. After his father passed away, he mentioned that his mom, Barbara Orbison, had worked on it. It was essentially up to them to handle it. He went on to say that the so-called Orbison Vault had a plethora of images and tour memorabilia, including images from all corners of the globe. Another objective accomplished by the three boys with the book was to correct historical misconceptions about the Orbison family name. The reason there wasn't much published about Dad is because he was a loner, like Howard Hughes or Greta Garbo, Orbison Jr. asserts. Due to the abundance of false information about him, I consider him to be among the most misunderstood artists of all time. We placed a premium on honesty when writing his memoirs. With that goal in mind, the authorized Roy Orbison begins with a thorough opening chapter, in which the brothers remember a visit from Jeff Lynne to their house in Hendersonville, Tennessee. The chapter details their recollection of Lynne's visit, and how the boys sought to convey it in an amusing way. While Lynne was unguarded, the kids were fighting it out with their improvised paper towel explosives, and Lynne was left for dead. Dad sure wasn't too pleased, they write, but Jeff took it in stride, and after we made our apologies, everything went back to normal. Elements from the book featuring tributes from artists who looked up to Orbison, such as Joe Walsh, Bruce Springsteen, and Neil Young, provide credence to the idea that Orbison had a significant impact. Songs like Dream Baby and Oh Pretty Woman have intriguing backstories that are also part of this collection. Orbison is one of the few musicians who refuse to be boxed in by musical styles. For Orbison Jr., he went from rockabilly to international pop stardom, is simply putting it. He avoided musical categories out of a fear of being lumped into one. His impact on music as a whole is incalculable. Albums like Crying and In Dreams included orchestrations that elevated pop music to a new level. During a time when macho posturing and sexual boasting were prevalent in rock, Orbison dared to reveal vulnerability. According to Orbison Jr., "I think he was the most romantic artist of all time." His father's songs and lyrics dealt with universal themes like grief. Adolescents still face that. At the moment, a great deal of music is synthetic. Still, Dad existed. Without a doubt, he is our hero. A lot of people thought Orbison was albino or secretly blind. It was also not true. As a kid, Orbison was prescribed thick glasses due to his extremely poor vision. Among his childhood eye conditions were hyperopia, strabismus, and astigmatism. A lifelong wearer of spectacles, he continued to do so even after becoming a famous musician in his adult years. But the sunglasses appearance was totally accidental. The Authorized Roy Orbison is a book written by Roy's sons in which they detail the origins of Roy's distinctive spectacles. He had his regular spectacles plus a pair of prescription sunglasses for everyday outdoor use while traveling in England. Unfortunately, he forgot his usual spectacles on an aircraft in the United States just before his departure for the tour of the United Kingdom. He was forced to transport himself across the pond with just his sunglasses due to the lack of time to procure an additional pair. As he disembarked from the plane upon his arrival in England, photographers snapped shots of him. People thought he was trying to seem cool by wearing sunglasses, and that impression stayed. The decision to wear dark spectacles by Orbison had practical considerations, but it also added an air of charm and stage presence. His demeanor was given an aura of mystery and coldness by the shadows. They were synonymous with his music and helped establish him as a one-of-a-kind rock and roll legend. In addition, Orbison opted to wear the spectacles because of his self-esteem issues. He was insecure about his appearance and thought his eyes were too tiny when he was just starting out. He felt more secure and empowered on stage once he started wearing dark glasses, which gave him the ability to disguise his perceived flaws and keep his privacy. His sons claim that even as a little boy, he dyed his hair jet black. Roy Orbison used dark spectacles for a variety of reasons, including convenience, charm, and his own fears. They bolstered the mythology and charisma around him and were an essential component of his artistic persona. Throughout rock and roll's history, Roy Orbison's influence has shaped the genre and generations of music that followed. The unique structure and lyrical depth of Orbison's songs set them distinctive during an age when powerful guitars and pounding backbeats were the norm. In spite of the fact that Orbison's music drew from a wide range of sources without directly imitating classical music, his unique vocal style and stage presence led to him being compared to classical performers and given the nicknames Caruso of Rock and Big O. In its place, he broke new ground in popular music and won over listeners all over the globe. His music has stood the test of time because of the power and complexity of his arrangements, which evokes strong feelings in listeners. Roy's Boys LLC, established by Orbison's sons, is responsible for managing his repertoire and protecting his long legacy in the music industry. The continuation of Roy Orbison's enduring music into the future is assured by his recent endeavors, such as the release of the album Unchained Melodies starring the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and the Roy Orbison Hologram Tour. Dave Marsh, a music reviewer, said it beautifully when he said that Roy Orbison's songs are unlike anything else in pop music. Often venturing beyond the domains of eccentricity, Orbison's music, like the man himself, transcends time and genre. The New York Times' Peter Watrous lauded Orbison for creating an own sound in popular music that defies convention by embracing creativity and strangeness. Elton John's songwriting collaborator Bernie Taupin praised Orbison for his tendency to take unanticipated creative risks. K.D. Lang also highlighted the significance of surprise in effective composition, using Orbison's superb use of a single phrase to end Running Scared as an instance. The unorthodox method that Orbison employed even tested his associates. While Orbison's music may seem strange at first, session guitarist Jerry Kennedy of Nashville remarked that it was brilliant when listened to again and again because of his desire to go against the grain. Roy Orbison's music, with its one-of-a-kind charisma and enduring appeal, challenged norms and expectations while enthralling audiences. In such case, how is Roy Orbison in your opinion? Leave a comment with your ideas. We appreciate you taking the time to view this movie, and we hope you enjoyed it. Click the link that appears on your screen to stay updated on your beloved celebs, where we meet next.